Welcome Internet to another Comics RX. This is MD Reese here to diagnose the problems I see in comics and prescribe solutions. Today we're talking about Detective Comics 977, Part 2 of the Batman Eternal story by James Tynion IV. Now, if you might remember from my last video, or if you read the story, it started off with Tim being all huffy and mad because he wanted to rebuild the Belfry and restart the Knights Protocol, the training program for all the junior vigilantes, and Bruce said no. And that issue ended with Tim being accosted by Ulysses Armstrong, who I remember as the General from when I started reading comics back in the day. He was a minor villain from the pre-52 universe. Now, one of the parts of this that I'm going to get into is it's coming on there. We've got to get to it though. So, So this issue 977 starts here with Tim in college in a few years in the future, and Tim's there at Ivy University, and he's there with his old buddy from high school, Ives, created by the remarkable Chuck Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. And Ives and Tim they're just talking about stuff, and Tim's talking about how much fun it is to be a student, as he's retired apparently from the vigilante shtick. Well, what should happen in this story in the future? But they get word that Gotham City is being shut off, being declared a no man's land again, as the colony has been sent in to apprehend Batman for the final time. And so Tim races to get his Red Robin costume to go save Bruce from the colony. Now, if you did not know, the colony is a paramilitary black ops organization of the United States government, and in current continuity is presently, where we're at in the story, being headed up by Bruce's uncle on his mother's side, the father of Batwoman. That's the plot point. So, Bruce has been told to deal with his issues and to give up, to throw down his weapons, take out his implants, and give up politely. And the colony soldiers invade, and they go into the clock. When they go into the Batcave, and Bruce is fighting them off, and what should happen? But his cousin shows up with a gun and says, "Give up." And Bruce says, "I'm never gonna give up." And so she shoots him. Then Red Robin, Tim Drake, shows up here in the Redbird, which I gotta show here. It's not quite the same style I'm used to, but it looks definitely like the Redbird car, if you're familiar with Tim's car from the original 90s series. Started, I suppose that was 96, that one started in. But Tim is there, and he's mad, and Tim says, "What the hell did you do?" And woman says, "I did exactly what I had to do." And then end simulation. Oh my goodness, what happened here? We see that the whole thing is a VR simulation that Ulysses Armstrong here has been shown to Tim of a possible future. Now, he says, "What is all this story? I don't understand what this is that we just witnessed." And Ulysses Armstrong says, "The future." And it turns out that a few stories before this, evil Tim from the future showed up, and embedded in his costume was all of this data about all this stuff that happened, and why he had to go back in time and try to defeat Batwoman, try to kill her before she could kill Bruce and a bunch of other people, because part of her thing is the use of lethal force as a last resort, whereas Batman and Tim are both no lethal force ever, right? So that's a philosophical break between them. Okay, so Ulysses tries to say, "Look, we can save the future because I used to work for the colony. It was in the Rise of the Batman story, and it made me very rich. And so I have lots and lots of resources in this big fancy house, and we can use that to save the future because now we have all this information on it, and we can use the technology that evil Tim from the future brought back to prevent Tim, from ever becoming evil. And Tim says, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Now, what's this in the background? See here on the monitors? It's the eye, the brother eye. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. So bear with me, because that's the technology that evil Tim from the future brought back that he's specifically wary of. And I'll tell you right now, I already am not a fan of that. But Tim isn't sure about using the knowledge from the future to fix the past. Not sure if that makes any kind of sense. Meanwhile, across town, Lucius Fox prepares to leave his company to go fight with the colony, because he and Azrael and Kate Kane have decided that fighting with the colony is the thing to do. And so he's leaving the company to his sister, who's already the business manager, and that's supposed to be a thing. And there's all sorts of little cute conversations and between all the characters and everything else. And we're introduced to these two guys here. I don't believe their name is mentioned, but if they are, it doesn't matter. Here's baldy head tattoo and side of your head shaved dude. Right? Now, that matters here in just a second. So, they have to go back to the colony ship because they're already on duty, whereas Azrael and Batwing and Batwoman have the night off before their shift starts tomorrow or something like that officially. And then we see that here they're initializing their little Batman armor suits, and then the Brother Eye logo comes in, and these guys, they've got the red eyes of the drones. They've been taken over here, right, by the Brother Eye. Now, here I guess is the best time to talk about this. Brother Eye is the satellite that controls the OMAX. Okay, so what is the OMAC, right? Why do I hate it so much? Well, the original OMAC was back in the 70s. Jack Kirby created OMAC One Man Army Corps as a series of stories that were set in a future, a crappy future, a embattled future, and Buddy Blank was essentially given the power of the one-man army corps by this artificial intelligence satellite called Brother Eye in this alternate future. And it was just a series of stories he did after the Forever People and the other Fourth World books got canceled. And it's just him flushing out his contract with DC. He came up with his OMAC stories. And they never really fit into the main DC universe. And people kind of came back to the idea every once and again. And that was just sort of an idea that was in, like, Commandy, The Last Boy on Earth. It was just a story that was in the mix. It wasn't a huge part of anything. Until the aftermath of Identity Crisis. And Identity Crisis was, for the big picture of the DC universe, a horrible idea. Right? You know, it wasn't, I'm going to say, a terrible story. I haven't read all of it. I've read parts of it, and the story itself seems to be well done. It is a mystery. It is a personal drama. But what it ended up being is that it retconned a dark and disturbing story into the history of the Justice League, where Dr. Light sexually assaulted Sue Dibney, the wife of Elongated Man, the happy-go-lucky Nick and Nora Charles of the DC universe. And the other heroes, and this takes place in the first couple of years of the Justice League, they're so shocked, they're so torn up by this sexual assault, about this rape, to call it what it is, that they don't know what else to do. They can't let Dr. Light go on from this. They can't just put him in jail. He's violated in such a terrible fashion that they basically guilt, if I remember right, Zatanna, the magician, to magically wiping Dr. Light's mind and turning him into a Phoebe that the Teen Titans easily defeat. And the one thing interesting about Identity Crisis is it does make a reason why when Dr. Light, in his original appearances, was tough, and then those later appearances was a pushover. Why is that? It's because Zatanna meddled with his brain. But in telling this story, they set up a reason for Batman to distrust superheroes. So in the pre-52 universe, it became the story that Batman, distrusting superpowered beings, distrusting his friends and compatriots, developed a satellite that is capable of logging, cataloging everything, just total spyware kind of stuff about these superhero characters so that he can come up with backup plans to take anyone down he might need to, because he doesn't trust people. And that led into a series called the OMAC Project, which was part of the build-up to Infinite Crisis, another story that broke down a lot of what made the DC Universe distinct from the other comics of the Pouch era. One of the things that made the DC Universe distinct was that it was built on Batman, whose desire is to fight criminals, right? To keep others from hurting the way he's been hurt. It was built on Wonder Woman, desire to use justice and self-empowerment to speak for justice. It was built upon Superman, whose very presence is the potential of human goodness. And this ignored all of that stuff, and it created a darker, sinister, a DC universe that was cynical. And it ended up coloring the universe in such a way, Identity Crisis broke what made the DC universe work. And it was a downward spiral from there all the way down to the birth of the New 52. And it slowly ate away at little bits that made the DC universe matter. It was all been big event, in this giant spiral to lead toward the New 52, which missed the core of what made the DC universe work in so many ways that they ended up abandoning much of it and bringing in bits by bits of that pre-52 universe as we're seeing right now. And this story has a lot of that. So the Brother Eye, right, that Batman developed, right, is then being used to take over these guys, and that's what was happening back over here with Ulysses Armstrong, is that he is working. He's got the computer system loaded up with Brother Eye, and that's what he's secretly pulling the strings there, right? That's what's going on right there. He's pulling the strings. So, meanwhile, across town again, Batman is on his nightly patrol, right? Here you go. And who should show up but Tim? And Tim says, this part of the story was great. Tim shows up and he's like, look, maybe I was out of line. I don't care. I just saw some stuff and I want to hang out. I want to fight crime with you. That's what I got into this business for. And, it feeds on this relationship that Bruce and Tim have, and the whole thing. So then they're talking about how they're going to go in and stop these crooks who are planning this badness. And what should happen right here? But the two mind-controlled soldiers fall through the skylight and then just start mowing these criminals down. Look at that, just guns ablazing, and that's where this issue ends. Right? Now, I mentioned that Detective Comics in the last video. The Detective Comics here, this story started with not enough detective work. Right? This story also doesn't have any detective work, but it does have the beginnings of those clues being laid down. It's got the Brother Eye thing in there. It's got Tim questioning Ulysses' motives. It's got him and Bruce talking about doing some crime fighting, and that's fun, right? It does have the colony side story that's still going on. That's still a part of the story, but it's a kind of a different take on it. And what happens next? Excellent cliffhanger. This kind of picked up, and like I said, I hate the Brother Eye story, not the original OMAC. I don't have an opinion about that story. It's not really my thing, but I don't, whatever, right? But the Batman creating the satellite that, and the nanobots that create these robots, not a fan of that story. But we have an intriguing aspect with how this is playing, because we set up that Bruce and Tim have a difference of opinion in the last comic, but here Tim, looking to the future, is rethinking his attitude toward their difference of opinion. Not necessarily his opinion, but the attitude that he was presenting in it. And that's a fun thing to see. Tim, one of the things I loved about Tim, is written by Dixon and by other people before that, when he was in the Robbins gear, is that Tim's thoughtful. He thinks things through. Peter David in Young Justice played on this too. It's made him a great straight man. Is that Tim's thoughtful and he thinks through things, and that's fun to see. So I really enjoyed this book. This second issue of this storyline. We're going to see where it goes from here and see how it ends up at the end. So despite my disliking parts of the first issue and disliking the OMAC thing, let's play it out. Let's roll the dice. Let's see what happens. And we'll see you guys next time. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and happy reading.